Namaskar. Today is July 9th, Friday, and welcome to Daily Global Insights with Sree and Sree, episode 200. Before we jump into today's news, here is a short video of the journey thus far. Welcome to Daily Global Insights with Sree and Sree. Today is the 7th of July, Wednesday, and this is episode. Hello and welcome to episode number 52. Hello and welcome to 60th episode. Hello and welcome to episode number 87. Hello and welcome to episode number 100.
So Hong Kong dollar, so you can have it two currencies, Hong Kong dollar in Hong Kong, as well as then you can have the renminbi.
Proxy battle that is going on between China and United States.
Take a quick look at the US elections and then we will tell you about some very, very interesting breaking news about members of the CCP party. If only US had continued doing shale production, it could have been a good safety valve. This is my opinion, sir. I don't know what you think. And Sridharji, welcome to episode number 200.
Good morning to everybody, we congratulations and thank you, and we look forward to your continued support as we complete 200 and move on to the next phase. So very excited to be part of this experience thus far, sir.
Sir, the pleasure is all mine. And in top stories today, in global news, Japan bans Olympic spectators at Tokyo area venues to implement precautionary measures. Taiwan asks US not to cause misunderstanding after the flag tweet removed. Sir, a couple of days ago, we saw a very interesting statement by Campbell. Was that a result of what is this flag tweet, sir?
It's very simple that White House tweeted in which they had indicated they've supplied over 40 million vaccines to a number of countries. In the tweet was a list of flags of countries to whom the 40 million vaccines went. Included in that was the Taiwanese flag. Lo and behold, all of a sudden the flag disappeared. The belief is that there must have been subtle pressure coming from China. Whatever is the rhetoric that Biden and his administration is dishing out, there seems to be some understanding between the Chinese and the present administration. That is further amplified by Kurt Campbell's statement, which is again a little provocative, which we covered yesterday, and contrarian to what they have been saying all along, namely that Taiwan should not be aspiring for independence, and Taiwan independence is a very sensitive issue. This is coming from Kurt Campbell. While on the contrary, Japan has been sending vaccines, thousands and thousands of vaccines, and stating very clearly that any red line crossed by Taiwan into Taiwan would be a red line as far as Japan is concerned, and Japan will fight alongside the Taiwanese. So it's a very unfortunate, and Taiwan has said, please do not create misunderstanding by engaging in such acts to the Biden administration.
So let me understand this correctly. United States has a two-China policy, isn't it?
United States has a two-China policy, but it has never implemented, be it in Tibet, be it in Hong Kong, be it not yet, but maybe who knows, in Taiwan. Hong Kong is very much gone, is integrated. Even the democratic laws have been draconian in terms of their withdrawal. Everything has been taken out, and Biden remains a silent spectator. As far as Tibet is concerned, there has been the Tibet independent program policy, but that remains only in books. They probably sent a token 1 billion or 1.8 billion to the Tibetan administration in exile. It is more India which is supporting Tibet rather than the US administration. I don't recall Biden even wishing Dalai Lama on his birthday. So everything remains in paper. If I have to go by the precedents, whether this invisible hand of Mr. Obama is at work, because Obama allowed, and I have steadfastly maintained, and I have stated this in Obama went to sleep when China began all its incursions, including the Spratly Islands in South China Sea. So what we are seeing here is that the same policy being reenacted. I don't know whether it is Biden or some of the people under Biden given Biden's own, physical capabilities in terms of comprehending what is around him.
So this calls into question the chief of staff of Biden. He's the one who's supposed to be maintaining discipline and order among all these warring feuds and factions that is typical for any White House. And it's really, really strange why this administration flounders so much. Partial vaccinations not enough to fight the Delta variants, study finds, as the Delta virus strains gain momentum in Asia. Sir, Asia is now again in the news for the wrong reasons. How do you think this is going to play out? I mean, I think even in the United States, the Delta variant is rearing its ugly head, isn't it?
It is. The CDC reported that there is greater than 50% cases reported in the United States is due to Delta variant. In some states where there has not been vaccination, the cases is as high as between 70 to 80%. It doesn't look like it doesn't matter to the general American public. They're turning a blind eye unless and until the crisis becomes a pandemic level type of a crisis. Yes, clearly there is problems in Asia. They have seen rising cases now right around on the back of lack of availability of vaccines. You remember, lack of availability of vaccines. And the other thing that's compounding the fact is some of these countries chose Sinovac, and they find that the Sinovac is ineffective. Even those people who have been vaccinated is ineffective. So you are seeing Indonesia, massive shutdown, Malaysia, Thailand. Now, Japan is saying it's just going to impose a major curfew and emergency around the Tokyo venues, but also just have a very clear and cautious approach in monitoring. And I think they've also got some major travel bans in place. And so, yes, I think how is this going to play out? Sir, this is, nobody can predict how this is going to play out as far as these Delta and other variants are concerned. So we just have to go by what we see. I mean, we are already talking about Lambda. Forget Delta. We are now talking about a Lambda variant. We don't know what the consequence of that Lambda variant is.
And Taliban fighters capture key Afghan border crossing with Iran. And as Biden says, Afghanistan is an unwinnable war. Afghan forces are engaged with Taliban across a number of towns as security deteriorates. Iran has declared war on the US through its proxies as US forces are attacked both in Syria and Iraq on a daily basis. Russia led bloc to mobilize military if Afghan border situation worsens. Russians alert Tajikistan. So the fact that Taliban, which used to be in the southeastern corner of Afghanistan, have managed to go all the way across and capture a border crossing on the Iranian border tells you that the width that they have already covered.
I think the strategic, what you call planning, has been at the forefront of Taliban. They just have not taken this lying down for the past 20 years in exile or on ground. They have been planning this. So they're well organized, well orchestrated, notwithstanding the fact that the Afghan forces are saying that they are ready to combat Taliban. Having said that, they seem to have, again, diplomatic reach into Tehran, they have diplomatic reach into Qatar, they have diplomatic reach into Turkey, they have diplomatic reach into Russia. So I think all these countries are also preparing themselves to see any kind of fallout that comes out of the potential civil war that's happening. While this is going on, there are rumors and reports that China is now eyeing its opportunity to step into the country, both on the infrastructure and tap into the mining resources.
And Chinese mining project threatens local water supply, and locals say that Chinese are pushing forward despite local protests and objections. Russia to deploy hundreds of military personnel to Central African Republic to help the government forces fight the rebels. Where is this water problem, sir? Which part of the world?
The problem is in Zimbabwe. It's in western Zimbabwe, in the Hwange reserve, which is considered as one of the largest national reserves of Zimbabwe. It's in the western Hwange district. It's a big source of water supply. This mining is likely to pollute the water, which will impact the people around who are living, the tribals living around the park and the region.
but the Chinese, care very little. In fact, I mean, whenever China occupies any part of the world, their total abuse for human rights and human values and the destruction of natural ecosystem is profound. Nobody needs any evidence. All you can do is you need to look at the what they have done in Tibet. Look at what they have done in some of the water systems in Southeast Asia, flowing from there and including into India. So now this is stepping into Africa, and where they seem to want to take up significant position, basically to drill for their needs for coal and other types of resources. Now they've got a well-established port in Dar es Salaam, and they also have, around the Djibouti, they have built a huge infrastructure. So they've got all the stuff. So they will care two hoops, and they will use their muscle and money, and the tribals are raising objections. Yes, nobody will do anything. Folks, the reason why we continue to cover very extensively the flashpoints of the world in the global news is that we pointed out the Sahel region, and you can see the imprint of the China, Russia, the Islamic forces, and the trouble that is brewing around, which can all become simultaneous flashpoints as we get past the COVID situation.
And Belarus government blocks media outlets and detains reporters. So Belarus used to be one of the satellites that formed what is called as USSR, isn't it? So now they are going the same communist way.
They are. It is the regime Shevchenko's regime is supported by the Russian Vladimir Putin. So therefore they are in it's dictatorial. It's one-party democracy, and they will impose their will anyway. So therefore, if you remember, a couple of journalists who tried to board a flight, the flight was stopped, and the journalist was deboarded from the plane. So the story is that this thing is continuing. Now they have put media outlets blockade, as well as starting to detain reporters. So very much, as you rightly said, going down the communist model.
And let's take a look at India news now. External Affairs Minister Mr. Subramaniam Jaishankar says that Russia and India relations is the steadiest excuse me, since World War II, and India looks forward to hosting Vladimir Putin at the bilateral summit in New Delhi later this year. PM Modi and President Putin have met 19 times since 2014, he further added. On China, the minister stated that for 40 years China and India had cordial relationship, but in the past 2 years trouble has been brewing around the border with no sign of let up. I might as well add that Xi Jinping and Modi met 18 times thus far in the last few years. India's External Affairs Minister will be in Georgia for 2 days on July 9th and 10th on his way back from Russia. He will be meeting the Foreign Minister of Georgia. Sir, Russia, perhaps Georgia, and then even Afghanistan. Jaishankar is doing his best to try and see what can be done in what I see as a losing cause, especially as far as controlling Afghanistan is concerned. India built their parliament. India built a dam for them. I don't know if these guys will care one hoot or the other for these things.
Well, first and foremost, I think the Russia is a strong endorsement and a sentiment, which is namely we continue to stay engaged with all the people, irrespective of the adversarial positions that they take. For example, Russia still, notwithstanding the US, Russia is the #1 arms supplier to India as far as India is concerned. Right? Number 2 is Israel. So therefore, he's going and making a statement. Yes, 19 times he has met. He probably has not met Biden, 10 times or 5 times. He may have met President Trump 19 times, and therefore there was an endorsement coming from that side of the fence. But, right now, where is Biden and Mr. Modi? There is only Vice President Harris. So he's endorsing the sentiment of Vladimir Putin, and he's inviting him. Look, there's a changing world situation. There's a different regime. The geopolitics has changed. So we welcome you back in case you want to come, and we welcome. So I think that's the point. But remember, when he did that, he also said, oh, Mr. Lazarov went to Pakistan on his way back, right? So we're going to Georgia. I have a very good relationship with Georgia. He's spending 2 days, today and tomorrow, July 9th and 10th, in Georgia on his way back. as far as your point around Afghanistan is concerned, they're trying to make sure that they stay engaged in terms of protecting some of the assets and people and see how best that can be organized. I don't think they can salvage the situation as far as Afghanistan is concerned. And to that extent, you must give some credit, which is Taliban has stated, we never talked about Kashmir, we never talked about the Kashmir issue, and that we will have boots on the ground participating in the local agitation. This is very clear from Taliban. To that extent, you have to give credit, which is to say, we stay engaged with them, unlike in the past where we didn't have any conduit of communication. So that's my interpretation, sir, in terms of all these visits. Yes, India has invested in Afghanistan, but India has invested in many countries, just like many other people have invested in many other countries. You have to take all this with a pinch of salt as the geopolitics makes its way.
General Naravne arrives in Italy for a 2-day visit following his UK trip. His focus will be on bilateral ties and strengthening the relationship. Now, Italy has been, after the Second World War, I've not really heard of Italian weaponry or prowess in terms of arms, sir. What is the significance of this visit? Can you throw some light?
The significance of this visit is basically there is some ceremonial linkage to the Italian army going back in time. So that's number one. And number two is they are also broadening the flexibility of relationship across the EU. This is a trip that follows UK trip into Italy. So they're trying to. India already has a pretty strong relationship with France. Germany, the situation. So therefore, they are trying to extend their reach and meet as many people as possible, both within the context of the friendship. There has been some controversy around these Italian sailors being locked up and being released. I don't have the specific details around that. This is going back in time, so it's also possibly ironing out some of those issues as far as the Italian trip is concerned. The fact that the general, the chief of the army is going is a reflection of the significance of the importance.
Some have expertise in making virus and some have expertise in making vaccines. The new Minister of State for External Affairs, Ms. Lekhi, fires her first salvo. In a rare development, Indian envoy in Saudi Arabia and the OIC chief meet in Jeddah. What do you read into this, sir? I think they haven't met in a while, I thought.
Well, I think that there are two things. One is Ministry for External Affairs has made very clear statement, which is to say, don't interfere and don't allow Pakistan, he didn't use the word Pakistan, don't allow other players to come and use your platform and engage in abusive kind of tones and throw all kinds of allegations. So it's probable that the OIC had decided, why not we meet? So the guy must have gone and met and given the same sermon around basically saying, stay away from India and, we have very strong democratic principles here and don't give, platform to rogue players. So that would be my read of this situation. Yes, they have not met for a long time, but there has been ongoing dialogue, and this is just another example of the dialogue that has occurred.
And in US news, gas prices are up 40% since January and continue to climb. North Dakota sues Biden administration over the suspension of oil gas lease sales. Biden calls for end to tax breaks for oil companies as gas prices continue to rise. Taken together, are these all a fallout of the stopping of the shale extraction, sir?
Indeed. Not only stopping of the shale extraction, but also cutting out all existing leases and licenses, and also the new leases that were to be given out, stopping all of that, and then imposing additional taxes. It's like the butterfly effect. Today, this morning, the breaking news that we had a big rain in Manhattan. So there's always flash floods here. So one of the subways got flooded. So Madam Alexandria Cortez makes the statement, now I need the money because this is all caused by climate accord. Well, we have had flooding in many of these. We have a flat territory. We have flooding in many of the subway stations, etc., for time immemorial. But this is how the present administration is running its course, which is effectively to state that this is not good for the ecosystem. This is not good for the preservation of our environment. So let's cut. What it does, jumps the prices up, shoots the prices up. A very bad decision. I think we have covered this enough in DGI, sir.
Remove Air Force teacher who teaches critical race theory, urge members of Congress. I take it these are the members of Congress of the GOP. And conservative groups launch campaign against college vaccine mandates. It is absolutely government business to know who gets vaccinated, says Health Secretary. So I think the Biden administration is beginning to turn the screws a little bit to make sure that everybody gets vaccinated, I think. And your thoughts on this critical race theory, sir?
I think critical race theory is a political battle between the progressives, communists within the Democratic administration versus if you want to call it centrists or the right within the opposition ranks. Clearly, the parents have opposed it very stoutly. Why they are pushing this CRT into the school academic system? What purpose does it serve from an economic context? Begs the question. But it's become a political hot potato, and they just basically want to control and engage. And the best way to do it is by changing the minds of the people right in the school. Remember, Mr. George Soros was willing to put money in this specific project. He committed 10 out of the 15 million. He further committed that he would basically to make sure that the people are educated. What they are educated about, begs the question. But if this is what it is, that is just going to be outrightly declined by many people. Anyway, to come to your next question around the vaccines, there are many states where the vaccines that the kids have decided, kids and even armed personnel and people have decided not to vaccinate. So there is a mandate that is being pushed by Biden administration, which is to say if college kids have to come back to classes, then they have to be vaccinated. If they're not vaccinated, they wouldn't be allowed. This is what the GOP is fighting. As far as the door-to-door vaccination is concerned, there is a fear based on the 2020 elections that this is going to become a data gathering exercise by the government as we step into the crucial 2022 midterm elections, where there's potential that Senate and the House, most notably House, could be regained by the Republicans or the GOP. So therefore, they said we're going to do a door-to-door campaign, and the Republicans are up in arms, basically saying it is not the government's business. And the health secretary says it is the government's business to send people door-to-door and encourage them to be vaccinated.
Democratic lawmakers are trying to expand a proposed overhaul of policing laws. This is looking beyond punishing misconduct to dictate national standards for when officers can use force and when they can pull over drivers, etc. Calling for fourth stimulus check is most irresponsible and unwarranted, says Professor Brenberg. A little bit more about Professor Brenberg, sir. Is he a Republican-leaning person, or what is his backdrop on this?
So anyone who gives an opposition policy to the Democratic policy has to be either center or center right or right of right. Okay, let's be very clear. So Renberg is a professor from here, and he's a right professor. He's a right wing. He's basically saying already we are blown out. We got problems in economy. We don't have enough people to work. All are sitting and enjoying there. And you want another stimulus check? That means nobody will come to work for the rest of the year, right? Nobody will come because everybody is getting the money. So that's his statement. The reason why we are making the statement is that we are bringing out this as a news item is basically because there is a talk that is going on that this potentially Delta variant could cause a shutdown, and the press corps within the Biden administration has made a statement that by Biden, the White House will not be
opposing states that go in for lockdown. So if you go in for a lockdown or a shutdown, as the case may be, then naturally you need to create a stimulus check. So it's like, vicious circle. The country cannot afford to have another stimulus check and people, sitting behind the doors. And while the economy is, wants jobs, but nobody wants to work. So I think that's the nomenclature as far as this particular discussion. I don't want to miss the previous point, which is namely, they want to extend the police reforms to the extent from the White House, from the federal. They want to direct whether for a traffic, who can be stopped for a traffic offense, who can be stopped, and what should be the punishment. How do you deal with certain specific cases as it relates to be it homicide, be it other forms of violence. It's almost like saying, we will be telling how the police needs to behave. Guess what? But we are not accountable for any outcomes that is caused by these decisions. So in other words, if people suffer, if there are consequences in terms of the crimes, the rise in crime, we are not responsible. We are only responsible for directing how the police needs to behave. This is what happened in the defund police movement. You are seeing now the rise in homicides across the country. I've never seen a democratic administration overstep its reach and boundaries the way this present administration is doing, effectively trying to shape the country the way they want it to be, led by the progressives and probably the deep communists in the regime. That's how this administration looks. You've never seen, this type of outrageous policies coming from even a Democratic-led administration. You can take Carter, you can take you can take Clinton. There are principles in policies, in the way the economics and the social structure is maintained. But here, from elections to critical race theory to policing to everything, the Biden progressives want to run the country.
So every time you use the word progressive, what is registering in my mind is regressive, but that's just me. Worker shortage is the biggest issue facing economic revival as battles continues over staying home versus coming to work. Several states, on the contrary, are cutting income taxes to promote post-pandemic growth. So we have been over this now. So let's take a quick look at how things are evolving in the markets. And let's take a look at... hello and welcome to episode number 52. Hello and welcome to... The markets, I beg your pardon. I just got my clicks confused. Markets stumbled as the fears of global economic recovery mount with rising cases of variants. The Dow Jones, S&P, Nasdaq all fell, but today they are back up, aren't they?
Today the futures point to 250 points rise in at least the Dow, so therefore it'll rebound. Yesterday, bad news on the COVID variant. The market has reacted to sentiments. Then today the markets are saying, okay, we'll deal with this as more vaccines come out. Just on that point, Pfizer and Moderna have actually applied for an emergency approval for a booster vaccine. No decision has been made. This is, as we speak, breaking news that they are applying for a booster vaccine. Sorry, let's continue.
And Brent has stabilized around $74 and oil is at 73. 10-year Treasury notes dropped to 1.294% in a sign of flight to safety. We showed this to you yesterday. So I think with that, our today's module comes to a close, and we'll be back again next Monday, bright and early. Thank you, Sridharji, and congratulations once again.
Thank you. Best wishes.